Okay, Rabbi Isai, I need to see if this sound is working properly. So I will do just a test to get it set up before we begin. Not sure if the audio is being captured, so I'm still testing. Okay, let me test this again to see if the audio is picking up properly. Okay, I think we got it now. let's see how this sounds. Okay, I'm sorry that I was not smiling. I was just worried that it's not working right. Kiva set me up beautifully and trained me beautifully. Anything that I'm doing wrong, it's not because Akiva didn't train me well, it's because I didn't learn it as I should. But I'm doing my best. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I want to thank Akiva very much for spending so much time with me and training me on how to set this up. I'd like to start so that we could get going. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody feels good and we can possibly catch up today. So yesterday we finished the Mishnah at the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Today's daf is daf Yud Beis, so I'm going to start back from the Mishnah, and I could read your comments. So if there's any issue with the broadcast, please just send me a comment right on the YouTube chat, so that I don't have to look at my phone over here to see if anybody is WhatsApping me. So I'm going to get started. Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Lo yetzer achayit b'machtoi samach l'chashecha. A tailor who has a needle, and let's say it's stuck into his lapel, he shouldn't go out with that needle before night. Shema yishkach v'yetze, we're afraid that he'll leave it on his beged and he'll walk out on Shabbos. Part of what we're going to have to discuss, which the Gemara will discuss, is even if he walks out with the needle in his beged, is that a problem midaraisa? Because that's definitely not the derech of how people carry needles. But it is the way umnin, professionals, carry their needles. So that's something that the Gemara is going to discuss later. And a sofer shouldn't walk out with his pen. Yafla or v'lo yafala. Let me look at the art scroll to see how he pronounces the word. I think it's yafla. Let me just see. V'lo yafala. And a person shouldn't take the lice out of his kelim. And the Gemara comes out l'maskana that that's referring to la'or haner, because if you're relying on light from the ner to see what you're doing, you might be mata the ner, and that's a deraisa. V'layikra la'or haner, and one may not read to the light of a flame, because again he might be mata the ner, and that would be a deraisa. Be'emes amru hachazan roya heichen tinoikis karen. A chazan is allowed to watch the children reading and watch them reading, although he can't read himself. But the children are allowed to. Another common type of scenario that there's a gzeir for is la yechal azava mazava. This has nothing to do with Shabbos. This is talking about our chakas of nida that we all have, that if a woman is a zava or the husband's a zav, it's not both, it's either one, they shouldn't dine together because it could lead to an avera, and that's where we have harchakas. Zogt the Heilige Mishnah. Tan Hasam. Lo yamid Adam b'shus hayachid v'yishta b'shus harabim, or b'shus harabim v'yishta b'shus hayachid. So imagine you're standing right at the edge between b'shus harabim and b'shus hayachid, and there's a water fountain right over the line. So you want to lean over. To grab a drink. Actually, a water fountain is a very bad example, because that's not mobile. The whole chashash is here, if there's a bottle of water in Rishus HaYachid, and you're in Rishus HaRabim, and you lean over into the Rishus HaYachid to drink from that bottle, we're afraid that you might lean back, and then you're going to be carrying that bottle from the Rishus HaYachid into the Rishus HaRabim, or vice versa. So we don't even want you to drink it in the Rishus HaYachid. So again, let's be clear. If you're standing in Rishus HaRabim, for instance, and you're leaning over into a Rishus HaYachid, in my mind, I'm thinking if you ever walk through Monsey on Shabbos, a lot of people have coolers with cold water in it on their front lawns for people walking by to enjoy, to refresh themselves. So imagine if you're on the street, and that's a Rishus HaRabim, and you lean over into his property to take a drink from that bottle. You're not allowed to, because if you lean back with that bottle in your hand, you ended up transmitting that water into the Rishus HaRabim. Tosfos discusses, well, if it's in your mouth and you bring it over, it's going to be the same problem. And indeed it will be, and that's also part of the gzeira. But once you swallow it, even though it's going down into your intestines, that's not a problem. Once you swallow it and you're leaned over into the Rishus HaYachid, it wouldn't be a problem. But our concern is you might lean back into the Rishus HaRabim before you swallow it. So again, Tnan Hasam, Lo Yamid Adam b'shus hayachid v'yishta b'shus harabim, or b'shus harabim v'yishta b'shus hayachid. Avalam hifas roisha v'rubai l'mokem shu soisa. If he's almost completely in to the rishus, so for instance, if he's standing in Rishus harabim, if he's almost completely in the Rishus hayachid drinking, that will be allowed. That will be mutter, because then you're not choshid that he'll by mistake pull the water over to his side. And then Dr. Mishnah v'chein begas, and the same thing would apply in a wine press. That's not clear what that means, and the Gemara is going to clarify that shortly. Ibraylu frek the Gemara. Karmelis mai. What would the halacha be? Not if you were in a Rishus HaRabim and you were leaning into a Rishus HaYachid, but what if you were in a Rishus HaRabim and you were leaning into a Karmelis, or if you were in a Rishus HaYachid and you were leaning into a Karmelis? There, even if you would actually transport the water from the Rishus HaYachid into your Karmelis, or vice versa, it would only be a derbanan. So are we geyser not to do a derbanan, which is a derbanan of a derbanan, a gzera l'gzera? Amar bai it's the same thing, and you are geyser, which is a chiddush. Rav Amar, that's not logical. He gufa gzera. The whole Karmelis is only a gzera. V'anam nekum v'nigzer gzera l'gzera, and we're going to ask her leaning over to drink because it might come to carrying vita only in a Karmelis. That's not logical. We don't make a gzera l'gzera. Amar bai mina minallah. How do I know, in fact, that you are geyser in this case by a Karmelis? Tikatani. if we go back and analyze the brisa we just learned, it says v'chein begas right up over here. What does that mean? My gas. What is a gas? A gas is a wine press. So irishus hayachid, if a gas is technically and legally a rishus hayachid, tanina, we've already learned that you're not allowed to lean over into rishus hayachid. Irishus harabim, if the gas has a status of rishus harabim, again tanina, the brisa states beferish you can't go from rishus harabim to rishus hayachid, or from rishus hayachid into rishus harabim. Elulav karmelis, the chiddush of the telling us v'chein begas must be to tell us that even in a karmelis it would be osur. So you see, in fact, that they were geyser a gzeira l'gzeira. I'm going back to the WhatsApp because I realize it's not live. The comments. So if anybody wants to send a comment on WhatsApp, I'll take a peek at it from time to time. Zok tehila gemor weiter. Rav Amar v'chein begas. What does that mean? It means le'inyan meiser. When the brisa says v'chein begas, it's not talking at all about the same shaila we've been discussing about leaning over and drinking from one rishus to another rishus. It's not even talking about Shabbos at all. It's talking about the halacha of meiser. Rashi tells us that in order to be chayiv meiser on meiser midaraisa, in order for something to be tevel midaraisa, two things have to be. A is it has to be a gemar malacha. We have to have the final peri, such as in this case wine, but it also has to have been brought into your home. It can't be in the process. So wine on a gas is considered not chayiv and meiser. So if you are standing beside the gas and you were leaning over onto the wine press and you were drinking the wine right out of the wine press, zokt the Mishnah v'chein begas, that would be osur to do, because we're afraid that you're going to take it off the wine press, and once it's off the wine press, it's tevel midaraisa, and it's osur to drink that wine. But if it's rosh v'rubai on the gas, then you would be allowed to. V'chein amar Rab Sheshes v'chein begas le'inyan meiser, and that's how Rab Sheshes also learned pshat in the brisa of v'chein begas. That's referring to meiser. It's not a shaila of Shabbos, and therefore Rava holds that in a karmelis you wouldn't be geyser to lean over into another shus to drink. Ditnan, shoysen ala gas. You're allowed to drink wine on the gas even before your mafresh trumas and meisers. Bein ala chamen, bein ala tzoinen. In those days, they didn't drink the wine raw. What they would do is they would always dilute it. Now, if it was diluted with cold water, then and the fellow who's drinking this wine on the gas doesn't want to finish up, he'll just dump it back in and it'll continue on in the gas with the rest of the wine, which means he's not taking it out. It's not going to be roya pnei habayis. But if he diluted this wine that he drank with warm water, he will for sure not pour it back into the gas, Rashi says. Because if you pour back warm wine into the gas and it'll blend with the other wine there, it will spoil the wine. So the moment he mixed the wine with warm water, that's not going back on the gas, that's coming out. Therefore, it would be osur because we're going to consider it like it's been removed from the gas, and now it has a chiyuv of meiser midaraisa. So let's see what it says over here. Shoysen ala gas bein ala chamen bein ala tzoinen upater. So Reb Meir holds even if it's chamen and you're going to take it out, that's still not called a proper roya pnei habayis, and it will be pater divrei Reb Meir. And that's what our brisa means of v'chein begas. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok machayiv. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok holds if you're not allowed to drink on the gas, because when you're drinking on the gas and you're leaning over, that's called neker from the gas, and it's considered chayiv in ma'ishus midaraisa, and it's tevel, so you're not allowed to drink it. It depends on how you diluted it. Ala chamen chayiv, because as we said before, once it's warm, you're taking it out, you're not leaving it back in the gas. But ala tzoinen poter. But if you only dilute it with cold water, then whatever you don't drink, you're going to leave back in the gas, so we don't consider that the wine is now destined to be removed from the gas at this point. Because since he only diluted it with cold wine, with cold water, we know he'll be able to pour it back. Tanam, we learned in the brisa, a tailor should not go out with his needle near night. Why? Shema yishkach v'yetze. We're afraid night will come, and then he'll again be moitzi, and that could be a deraisa. Let's say that the case that the Mishnah answers is not when he's holding the needle in his hand, where if he carried it out on Shabbos it would be a deraisa. Rather, it was just if it's just on his lapel even if he took it out on Shabbos, that's not the derech of how people carry things, and it would not be aser midairaisa. So this is now a gzera. So you see from here that you do make a gzera, which would be a raya to Abaye and a kasha on Rava, who says you don't make a gzera when it comes to Itzah on Shabbos. So the Mishnah that says that a chai shouldn't go out with his needle, it means he shouldn't carry it in his hand, because if he carries it in his hand after chashecha, that's a true dairaisa, that's a one gzera, not a two gzera. Toshma. Now we have a brisa that's much more explicit, and it specifically says that it was not in his hand, the needle was on his beged. My Erev Shabbos. Pashtus, the brisa that we're quoting, is talking about Erev Shabbos, and it's a gzera if he walks out Erev Shabbos with the beged in his lapel, with the needle on his lapel, he'll also walk out on Shabbos with the needle on his lapel. Well, that's a gzera, because even if he walked out on Shabbos with the needle on his lapel, that would not be a deraisa. So, the brisa that says that you're not allowed to walk out with a needle on your lapel, that's not speaking about Erev Shabbos, that's speaking about on Shabbos. So it's again one gzera, because if you walk out with the needle on your lapel, you might walk out with the needle in your hand, and it's a single gzera. So the Gemara brings another brisa that's extremely explicit, and it makes it very clear that there is a gzera. So it clearly says, if you're walking out with a machet on your lapel, which is not the derech of how people carry things, it's even not on Erev Shabbos, and that's clearly a gzera, because even if he walks out with the machet on his lapel on Shabbos, it will only be a derabanan anyway. So Gemara, Hamani Rabbi Yehudi. This brisa that we just quoted, that holds that you're geyser not even to walk out with a machet on your lapel, if you're a tailor, on Erev Shabbos, goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds the Amar Uman Derech Nasei Chayiv. Even though the way you carry needles with your hand and not on your lapel, since tailors normally do carry out needles on their lapels, so for the Uman, that's the right way to do it. So for an uman it would be chayv midaraisa. Therefore, it's even also for a tailor to walk out with the needle on his lapel Erev Shabbos, because if he walked out with the needle on his lapel on Shabbos, it would in fact be a deraisa. Even though if he's not a tailor, that same action would not be also deraisa. A tailor shouldn't walk out with a needle, and Rashi tells us why do they walk out this way. It's to advertise that they're tailors. They didn't have internet advertising in those days. So the way people advertised their services is they put something on their beged so that people who saw them walking around in the shuk saw them as a walking billboard. They knew that this person was a tailor, and anyone who had the need for a tailor would go over to them and ask them for their services. And the same thing, carpenters walk around with a ruler on their ear. Now they use pencils. But again, anyone walking the street with a ruler on his ear, people would know he's a carpenter. And they say, oh, you're a carpenter? Can you come to my house? I have a cabinet that's broken. I can use you to fix it. Or there were people who used to stuff upholstery, and they had a string that they used to use for different functions. Again, he's not allowed to walk out with that string, even though it's around his ear. He's not holding it properly, because that's the derech v'domen. And the weaver may not walk around with a thread dispenser that he keeps on his ear. And the dyer, someone who dyes fabric, shouldn't walk around with swaths of material with different colors on them to advertise that he is a dyer. And the shulchani shouldn't walk around with a dinner in his ear, again, because these are all the right way for umman to walk out. If you did that, it would be pater avalaser, Reb Meir, because Reb Meir holds that it's not the derech. But Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, which is who the Gemara quoted earlier, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, umen derech nasei chayiv. An umen who does carry things out in this unusual fashion, he will be chayiv. It's called a deraisa. V'shar kol adam. But any other normal person who doesn't do this for a living, potter, they will be potter, because these are not the normal ways to carry things out. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Tani chado. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Azov should not walk out with they used to have a little receptacle, like a catheter. They used to have a little catheter they would walk out with to catch any emissions that they had. V'miyotza, but if he did walk out with it, poter avaloser. It will be poter because it's not midaraisa, but it is osir. That's one brisa. But Tani Idach, we had another brisa with the same case. Lo yetzei v'metzei chayav chatas. So we have a machlokes. If midaraisa, when you have a pouch like a catheter that's catching any emissions, if that's considered the derech of oitzah, and therefore it's a shayla, it will be osir midaraisa. So we seem to have a stira. Let's say that this machlokes is totally in the machlokes between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Since it's not normal to walk around with a catheter, unless you hold it in your hand, therefore Reb Meir holds that it's poter avaloser. But Reb Yehuda holds, if for you, this is the way you do it, so Vivalt Azov normally does walk around with a catheter in that fashion, so for him, that's derech, and that's deraisa. And that's what the Gemara wants to suggest. This machlokes is totally in the machlokes Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Amarei Abaye, I disagree. I don't think this machlokes has anything to do with Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Emer d'shamish le'ler Reb Meir. Where did we hear Reb Meir say that it's poter avaloser is b'midi telav hani urchei? Things that it's not to derech, but b'midi to hani urchei mi shamish le. When you're carrying a needle on your lapel, that's not the way anybody carries it. But when you're wearing a catheter, that is the derech. So Reb Meir would agree that would be chayiv. If you're going to say that if someone does something the normal way, he's not going to be chayiv. If you're not a professional wood chopper, you're an amateur guy, you're a Home Depot vendor, you're a Home Depot tradesman, and you're a homeowner, and you have an axe and you carve out some wood with it, you're not an uman. Are you going to tell me, Reb Meir hachanami deloy mechayiv? Are you going to argue that according to Reb Meir, he's not chayiv because it's not the professional way? It's only chayiv when you're a professional. You can't say Reb Meir holds only professionals will be chayiv. The machlokes between the two brises, whether or not it's poter avaloser or chayiv when someone's wearing a catheter, kan bezav bal shtei riyos, kan bezav bal gimel riyos. It depends on how many riyos they have. So we know by a zav, once he sees two riyos, once he has two emissions, he's tameh for 7 days. If he has a third emission, all that changes. Now he's chayiv a carbon. So if he had already two riyos, he needs that pouch. Why does he need that catheter? Because he needs to know if he has another riyah, so that he'll be chayiv in a carbon. But once he already saw 3 riyos, there's nothing really for him to know anymore, and therefore we'll say it's not the derech. Frek the Gemara, that doesn't make sense. Maishna zav bal shtei riyos. What's the difference? A zav who only saw twice, the chayiv, he's chayiv for walking around with this catheter. You know why? Because that's his derech, to be boilei lebedika. He needs it to be boidik to see if he has a third emission. Well then, zav bal gimel, even if he had 3 riyos, and anyway we already know he's chayiv a carbon, he also needs to make bedikas. He also needs to know if he had another riyah. You know why? Mibayre svira. He's going to be counting shivanakiyim. So he needs that catheter there so he can keep track of any emission that he has. Zok Gemara ein chanami. But when we say that the zav is not chayiv for walking out with this catheter, is a specific case. It's like the day he saw his third riyah, that day, at that point, he doesn't need to know if he has any more re'iyas that day, because he lost that day for Shiva Nakim. The very first day that he can count for Shiva Nakim would be tomorrow. So today he no longer needs to walk out with this catheter, and therefore, if he does, that's not called his derech, and therefore he would be poter avaloser. What's wrong with the fact that he wants to wear this catheter? Because he doesn't want to get his clothing dirty. He wants to capture any emission so that it shouldn't go on his clothing, and that also should be considered derech. And for that alone, the zav should be chayiv. And for the Gemara, Amar Abzeya, Hai Tana Huda Amar Kol Atzuli Timov Lechoshuv. This Tana holds that any time you wear something only for the purposes of keeping your clothing clean, that doesn't count. Titnan, hakoifa kaira ala koisel, if someone takes a pot or a plate and he turns it upside down on top of a wall. And the reason why he put it on top of the wall is because he doesn't want the wall to get wet if it rains. So he's protecting some type of surface with this kaira. And it rains on top of this kaira. In b'shvil shetudach kaira, if he wants this kaira to get rinsed off in the rain, so he wants this water there, because he wants the water to rinse off his keli, hareza b'chiyuta. Then this water will be machshir zorim. So let's just take a step back for a second. The halacha is, when someone has a peri, it cannot be makabel tumas oichlin unless it got wet. And the halacha is, the lashon pasuk is v'chiyutan mayim al zera. Yutan is spelled without a vav, and we say that it's written yitain, and it's pronounced yutan. Yitain means a person has to physically pour water on this peri in order for it to be a kabel tumah. Yutan means if it happened by itself. How do we make these two different interpretations come together? So the Gemara darshans that it has to be yutan dum yeditain, meaning even if the peri became wet from water or from any one of the mashkin by itself, no one poured it on, as long as the owner is happy that it got wet, is happy with that water, that's enough to be machshir zorim l'kabel tumah. So here we have a plate that water ran on the plate, and then it dripped over from there onto pears. In this case, I for sure didn't want the pears to get wet. Zok Rashi, doesn't matter if you want the pears to get wet. If you're even happy that the water is there to rinse your kaira, and it drips off onto a peri, that's enough to be machshir l'kabel tumah. So I put this plate on top of a wall upside down, and it rained, and water ran off that plate and hit some pears. So the halach is in b'shvil shetudach hakayra harezeh b'chiyutan. That's b'chiyutan. But in b'shvil shaloi yilok hakoisel, if the whole reason why it's there is not because you want to capture the water, to the contrary, you actually want to repel the water, you don't want the water there, then it's enu b'chiyutan, because that means you never wanted the water at all. So the Gemara wants to say that you seem to have a raya from here that shaloi yitanef, if you only have something there so that it should protect something from getting dirty, that doesn't really count as a proper tashmish. So the Gemara wants to say, hu adin, if a zov is wearing a pouch only to protect his kalim, that's not called a derech etzah, and therefore it will be potter. So I just want to bring up a very interesting shaila that Rabbi Elephant mentioned about this. I just want to pull out my notes because it was quite interesting. There's a shaila if you're allowed to wear something on Shabbos to save you from getting dirty. So the big shaila that we always have is, are you allowed to wear a plastic rain hat over your hat to protect your hat on Shabbos? So Rabbi Elephant spoke out, there's a big machlokes. He said the Klozen Bigger Rebbe and the Stipler said it's mutter to wear a plastic rain hat even though it's only protecting your hat, not you. However, Reb Moshe and the Satmar Rebbe were machmer and said that you're not allowed to wear a rain hat. However, if the rain hat is also protecting you, like our new black Shana mantles that also protect you, then it would be allowed. And I had a Rabbi Yaakov Stefanski, Zatzal, who told us that Rabbi Aaron Kotler said, in a starke Regen megmen. So he held that when it was raining very strong, you would be allowed to wear the plastic hat covers, and the reasoning is that if it was raining very strong, your hat would get so wet and so saturated that it would make you wet. So it really is like it's protecting you directly. Zok tehelu gemara weiter. Midami. There's no raya from there, from the case of the Kaira, that a zov going out with a pouch shouldn't be considered a proper etzah. You know why? Hasam leikaboya lehu lahani mashkin klal. In the case of the water on the plate, I don't want the water at all. I would actually rather it didn't rain, and then I wouldn't need this whole configuration. But hacha kaboya lehu lahai kiss lekabula beziva. Here I want the kiss. I might not want the ziva, but I want the kiss. If I want the kiss, so then it should be considered like this is derech haitzah, and avad it should be chayiv. It should be a proper malacha of haitzah. Halodomya, verkehrt, sagt the Gemara, it's mustaber to say that you would be chayiv, and it is a proper, it's a proper haitzah when the zav is wearing a kiss, and it's actually more similar to the seifa of this brisa. What was the case of the seifa? Halodomya the seifa, areva. If you have a box. Let me look at the Bach. Areva shenosna sheyered delaf l'seicha. Here, I didn't put an upside down ka'ira on the wall, which allowed the water to run off and not hit the wall. Rather, I put a shissel underneath it, on top of it. I put a shissel on top of the wall. So it's not just deflecting water, it's actually capturing water. So I put a shissel on top of the wall so that anything that drips should drip into the shissel. So imagine somebody has a leak in his roof and it's dripping from the ceiling, so he puts a bucket underneath it and the bucket catches the water. He doesn't really want the water, but he wants to protect the house from the dripping. So the halach is, my manitzin vanisbin einan bechiyutan. If the bucket fills up and spills over a little bit, or if when a raindrop falls into the bucket, it splashes out, that's any bechiyutan, because I don't want that at all. But shebesoicha, the water that was captured within the bucket itself, hareza bechiyutan. If that water went and fell on a peri, in fact it would be masheret to be makabel tumah. And that's similar to our case, because here, when the Zov was wearing the catheter, he doesn't really want the ziva, but he definitely wants to capture the ziva. So just like in the case of the reva, we say that it's b'chiyutan because it's doing its intended purpose, so too over here, when he's wearing this catheter, it's a proper derech haitzah, and it would be aser. So we don't know yet now, why is it? We still have a steer in brises, because one brisa said that it's pater of a aser, so we need to find out the reasoning for that. Zok Gemara, the reason is, everybody would agree, the reason why one brisa says that it's pater of a aser, and it's not aser d'oraisa, is Rabbi Yehuda over Rabbi Shimon. There's a very famous machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon by a malacha shein shricha legufa. If I do a malacha, but I don't need the malacha itself, like in this case, I'm wearing this beged because I'm wearing this catheter. The Zov is wearing this catheter because he doesn't want it to get dirty. So he doesn't really want to capture the ziva. He's not looking to capture the ziva. He doesn't want the ziva. So the pouch that he's wearing he's not really using it for what he wants. He's doing with it a malacha that he doesn't want. He doesn't need the capturing of the ziva, and Reb Shimon holds all over Hilchos Shabbos that would be pater. Let's see Rashi, Harab Yehudi, the Omer malacha she'ein tzricha legufa shebritzonei leisase ve'enei tzorich leikar tachlisa. He doesn't need the tachlis of the malacha that he's doing. Ki hacha, like in our case, she'ein tzorich leziva zu shal yad b'rak his hazeh. He doesn't need the ziva. He doesn't really need to capture the ziva. He doesn't want to retain it. Ve'aval pikein chayiv alea, nevertheless he'll be chayiv, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Uploktai b'makniya, the machlokes, the main machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon is later on. We're going to get up to it on Daf Tzadik Gimel. Kabimoitzi ameis b'mita. If people carried a mace out of the house in a mita, chayiv. That's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. V'avagav deitzas a mace lo nichale bei. Even though I don't want to take mace anywhere. I'd rather there was no mace at all. I'm taking it out because I don't want it. For Rabbi Shimon Poiter, because I'm not doing the malacha because I need a mace in the other place. I'm doing the malacha because I don't want the mace here. That's called the malacha shein shricha legufa. Same thing with this kiss. I'm not capturing the ziva because I want the ziva. I'm capturing the ziva because I don't want the ziva. That's a malacha shein shricha legufa, and therefore the carrying of the kiss for that purpose would also not be asur midaraisa, according to Reb Shimon, and that explains the brisa that says that if a zov goes out with a kiss on Shabbos, it's pater aval aser, according to Reb Shimon, pater v'chayiv, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Zok tehilgu gemar vayter. Tanu de Rabbi Shimon. Yotze adam b'tfilin be'erev Shabbos im chashecha. A person is allowed to go out with tefillin erev Shabbos. What's going to happen? He might forget, and he might keep it on Shabbos as well. No, you won't forget. My Tara, even the Amar Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Since Rabbi Bar Huna said, Chayiv Adam, L'mashmash b'tfilin, Kol Shah, a person has to constantly touch his tefillin, B'chol Shah v'Shah, and how do we know this? Kal v'chomer. Oh, I'm sorry, the v'chiyutan concept. I'm going to just ask if you can, if I still need to explain the v'chiyutan. I'm not sure when that note came up. I'm not sure when the note came up, if it came up before I explained it or after, so I'll just explain it again. The halacha of v'chiyutan is, in order for any meichel to be mekabel tumah als tumas oichlin, it has to first become wet. But it has to become wet with desire, meaning the water that makes it wet, or whatever mashka makes it wet, has to be a mashka that the person who owns it wants to have there. So for instance, if I have a peri that I left on my roof, and I left it on my roof to dry out, and I was hoping it wouldn't rain, and it rained on those pears are not going to be mekabel tumah because I didn't want it to rain. But if I wanted that water for whatever reason, I wanted to capture water, and I put a keli there, and it captured water, and then the water that I captured fell on the peri, even though I didn't want the peri to get wet, that would be mekabel tumah. That would be makshir the oichel to be mekabel tumas oichlin, because the water that was originally captured came with my will. I wanted it. Zok te heilige gemara weiter. So our shaila was, can you walk out with tefillin on Erev Shabbos? Zok te gemara, you're allowed to, because since Rabbi Bar Huna says that you always have to be touching your tefillin, and how do we know this? Kal v'chomer mitzitz. We know it from the tzitz. Ma tzitz. Madach the tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wore. Anga said, she'ein boy elo askara achas. It only has one name of Hashem. It says Kodesh Lashem. Nevertheless, Amar Torah v'hay al metzchei tamid. It has to remain on his forehead. Shelo yasich daitoi mimenu. He should not be Mesiach Das from the tzitz. Tefillin, sheyesh bas kares harbe. Tefillin that has multiple shemus of Hashem in the tefillin. Alachas kama v'kama. For sure, you should have to constantly be touching it. And if that's the case, we don't need to worry that you'll forget that you have it, because you're always going to be aware that you're wearing the tefillin. Hilcha mitkedachalu. Tanya Chananya Omer Chayiv Adam L'mashmish Bebigdoi Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha. A person has to stick his hand into his pockets. He has to check his begadim to make sure that he's not carrying anything on Shabbos. He has to do it Erev Shabbos to make sure that he's not carrying anything on Shabbos. And there's a shaila in the Rishonim if he has to do it on Shabbos too. If he normally keeps things in his pockets, then every time he wants to leave his house, he should always check his pockets as well, to make sure that he's not inadvertently carrying something outside. This is an extremely important halacha for Shabbos. This is a very important halacha because this will prevent someone from chas v'sholom being nichshol in hitzah. You're not allowed to take lice out of your clothing on Shabbos, and we touched la'ar there, but the Gemara is going to analyze to see what it's referring to. Ibailu, lo yefalas kelev b'yoyim shema yareg. Is the Mishnah saying that this has nothing to do with being matan there? Even during the day, maybe the Mishnah is saying you're not allowed to take lice out of your clothing, because if you take the lice out of your clothing, you might kill lice, and that wouldn't be allowed. Reb Eliezer, and it's going according to Reb Eliezer, the Tanya, Amar Reb Eliezer, ha'horig kina b'Shabbos, one who kills a lice on Shabbos, it's as if he killed a regular big animal, and it's a deraisa, and that's pshat in lo yafala kelev. And then the next case in our Mishnah, v'lo yikra la'ar haner shemayata, which is the next halach in the Mishnah. Is that how you learn our Mishnah? Or maybe there tarvayu shemayata. Maybe for sure by day you're allowed to kill lice. You're allowed to pull lice, not kill. You're allowed to pull lice out of your beged. And the whole shaila of our Mishnah of taking lice out was at night la'ar for the same reason why you're not allowed to read la'ar. So basically the shaila is the lo yafala and lo yikra the same thing, and it's both because of the chashash of shemayata, or is lo yafala a completely separate issue, and the question is, there's a chashash you might kill a lice. Toshma, a louse. Toshma, ein poilin vein koil la'ar. The Brisa says ein poilin vein kohen l'araner. So it seems to tell us that it's l'araner. Zok the Gemara. Why are you bringing a raya from this brisa, which is actually no more clear than our Mishnah? So it's still a suffix. Zok Tosfos, what's the Gemara's havamina that there was any more clarity in the brisa that we're quoting than our Mishnah itself? Zok Tosfos, the Gemara that suggested that this brisa would be a proof. So normally a brisa elaborates a little bit more than the Mishnah does. The oid the brisa kalani ein poilin vein korin mashma tvei the koi la'or haner at hervayu. It's mashma from the brisa that the la'or haner is going back both on the reading and on the it's going both back on the reading and on the taking the lice out. So there's two reasons why the Gemara thought it was a good raya. Either because the brisa would usually be clearer, and since the brisa only says la'or haner once, and it doesn't say anything about, and it doesn't provide any more information on the ein poilin, we assume that la'or haner is going back on both. That was one svara Tosfos says, and the second svara Tosfos says is that it doesn't say v'lo yifalas kelov. So it also seems to put the halacha of ein poilin together with the halacha of ein koren. Again, the Gemara says it's not a raya because mi'alim mi'masisen. Ta shema. Ein poilin la'or haner, ve'ein koren la'or haner. This is as specific as possible, so you clearly see that the problem of ein poilin is only la'or haner. So it's not a chash of killing the kina; it's a chash that you're going to be mated in there to see what you're doing better. These are from the halachos that came out of the lockup in the attic of Hananiah ben Chizkiya ben Garin, and this is one of the halachos that came out that it's all the iser of ein poilin is la'or haner because of achshash shemayata shema mina de tarvayu shemayata. The reasoning for both the not reading la'or haner and the ein poilin is also la'or haner because you might modify the flame, play with the flame, and that would lead to an iser deraisa. Shema mina. Zok to Helig Gemara weiter. Amar B'Yidam Shmuel. Afilu lahafchen bein bigdai levigdai ishtoi. You're not even allowed to use a ner to distinguish between your clothing and your wife's clothing. Now nowadays that wouldn't be an issue because our clothing is so drastically different than our wife's clothing. I could probably even detect my clothing over my wife's clothing without any light at all. But in those days, it seems like people wore similar type of flowing robes to women, and since they were similar, they actually needed light to make that distinction. City dwellers, they wore long clothing similar to their wife's clothing, and therefore they would be similar enough that you need light to make the distinction between the two. The farmers who wore shorter begadim because they were working in the fields and they couldn't afford to have their long clothing dragging along on the fields, getting torn by the different plants. Mediati, they can tell because those clothing would be much shorter than their wives. And even the B'nai Mechuzah, who we say their clothing are similar to those of women, that's only if they were older women who were longer begodim. But again, if it was younger people, then again they would be able to tell because it would be shorter. So Rashi is a kenos ksarim b'miktsas. They're a little bit shorter. V'shalanoshim munagim rechavim v'daimin zelazeh. Because we in Shemitah, the older women wore long clothing, wore shorter clothing, and the men wore wider clothing, so they could make the mistake between the begadim of Zakenos and the begadim of Anoshim Munagim. But the Yaldos, Rechavim Harbe, they're much bigger. Younger women wear much bigger clothing, and therefore the men's clothing are not similar to the clothing that these women wear, so there wouldn't be a problem of trying to make the distinction between the two of them because they're very easy to see. Why is a lice picking the same as reading? One malach is mutter, the other is not. The problem with the lice isn't because there's a problem per se of taking lice. The problem is if you need to see something closely, when you're picking out lice, you need good light to see what you're doing. We're afraid that you'll adjust the light. So it's a shiur of mavir, the shiur of eish. It's a shiur of playing with the flame. That's the malacha here, not destroying the lice. I can't do lice picking anywhere. I hear you. In those days, people had a much stronger stomach, I guess, to be able to handle these things. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, let's see what we have over here. Tanu Rabban, ein poilin b'rshus harabim. Ein poilin b'rshus harabim mepnei hakavod. It's not proper to pick your lice out of your kelim in rshus harabim because it's not nice. It's disgusting that you're picking around. Rashi says, "Shel ovin shlo yimasu." People walking by see you flicking your lice. It's like picking your nose in public. It's disgusting, and therefore one is not supposed to do that. People used to drink things that caused them to throw up, and then they would throw up on the street, and it was disgusting. So you're not allowed to do that. It's covered. So someone's writing in, lice picking is not mutter. So I think the Gemara is going to be discussing what the halacha is with lice picking, because there's a whole shiloh what type of lice. We're going to soon see the halachas of lice, but we can actually look at Tosfos. The shiloh with lice is as follows: the only animals that you're not allowed to kill on Shabbos are animals that we say are created through periyavrev, through normal mating. But the type of little lice, it was thought in those days, they came mizeas adam, like Tosfos says, elabah mizeas adam. If there was this belief that from the sweat of a person, these lice would be created. Now, Rav Elephant spoke out. We know nowadays that that's not how it is. We know nowadays that every species procreates the same way. Nevertheless, the halacha is species that are so tiny that we can't tell, they don't have the halacha of a regular balchai, and those are mutter to kill on Shabbos, and only species that are larger that we know reproduce the regular way, those would be asher midaraisa. That's what Rabbi Elephant spoke out. So Duvi is asking, why are we not also worried about muksa with the tradesman's tools that they might carry? We might be worried about muksa, but muksa is only a drabanan anyway, so we wouldn't have to be geyser a drabanan of a drabanan. So we wouldn't have to be geyser. Don't use muksa. Don't move muksa on Erev Shabbos, because you might move muksa on Shabbos. Muksa on Shabbos also is only a drabanan. We're concerned about something that would possibly lead to a deraisa, which would be a melacha of Eitzah. Okay, zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabban. I'm not sure who wrote that lice picking is not mutter, but if anybody wants to shed more light on the lice situation, that would be gewaltig. But that's what Rabbi Elephant spoke out, that the really small creatures are not subject to the Isser. And Tosfos speaks about it. And Tosfos discusses the different types, which of the ones are allowed, which of the ones aren't allowed, and if there's a problem of squeezing it or not. But the Gemara is going to get into it in a little bit more detail shortly. Zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabban, hamafos kelov, moilel v'zoyrek. Moilel means you could like squish them a little bit in your hands. You could like roll them around a little bit in your fingers. V'zoyrek, and then you give it a flick. Uvavad shlo yareg, but don't kill it. You could squish it a little bit to disable it. Rashi says, "Moil v'zoyrek b'Shabbos moil." Why? Lahatish koichan shelo yachzor elav. You squish them a little bit without killing them, because otherwise they're going to come right back. So you squish them a little bit, you disable them, and you give them a flick, and then they won't come back. So let's see what Rashi says. Moil v'zoyrek, because this talks to what we were discussing earlier. B'Shabbos moil lahatish koichan shelo yachzor elav ubelvad shelo Uvelvad shelo yom loyal b'doichik. You shouldn't squeeze them strong when you're rolling them. The yarg, and then you'll kill it. The spherele, this brisa holds, harigas kina shvus. Killing a kina is a derabanan. Abishol Eliezer holds like Eliezer, we're going to soon say, umechayev chatas. He holds that if you kill kina, it's a deraisa. So let's see the Gemara. It'll become clear now. Tana Rabbanon, hamafalas kelev. If someone is pulling the lice out of his begadim, molel v'zorik, he rolls them in his finger and flicks them away. He shouldn't kill them. He can pull them out. He's not allowed to roll them in his finger, because we're geyser. If he rolls them in his finger, he might kill them. And Abba Shol holds, as Rashi tells us, that killing a lice is deraisa, while the Tanakama holds that you're allowed to roll it in your finger, because even if you kill it, it's only a derban anyway, so we're not going to be worried to stop you from rolling it. Halacha moilel v'zark. The halacha is you are allowed to roll it in your fingers and flick it away. And this is the right way to do it, even b'choil. So clearly we're paskening that there is not a deraisa in killing this kina. Rabba maktalahu, Rab Sheshes maktalahu. Rashi says, Hargan ube Shabbos. Rabbi lechatchila went and killed these lice on Shabbos, and Reb Sheshes lechatchila killed them on Shabbos. And Rava shadi lehu lekana demaya. Rava would put them into a bucket of water, I guess, again, to disable them. But Rabbi Reb Sheshes clearly holds you're allowed to kill the kina. Omer lehu Reb Nachman levinte, ketulin, I want you to kill those lice, v'ashmi'ina likala desavasi. I want to hear them crunch. I want to hear that crunch when you crush that lice, so I can hear how my enemy is getting crushed. Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer. I don't know if you remember when we used to learn the Yisrael, they used to have these megabugs, we called them jukim, and we used to always want to kill them because they're disgusting. And when they created such a crunch, it sounded like a weapon went off. So that's probably what he means. Vashminli called us on Vasi. I hear that crush of the roaches as we crush them. Zogt the heilige Gemara weiter. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, ein hargen es macholos b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to kill a lice on Shabbos. Macholos Rashi is a kina. Divrei Beishamai usil matirin. Beisil holds you're allowed to. And Rashi tells us the svara of Beisil matirin. I'm just going to get the Rashi into the screen. Kedem afarish timer b'per shmoyne shrotzim. On the Afkuv Zayin Beis, it says me'elim ma'adomim, which is one of the chayus that were caught to make the hides that were required for the Mishkan. Just like Elim, they reproduce with normal reproductive systems. The kina ain't part of a rabba. It just grows out of the basar of a person. Again, we know scientifically that's not the way it is, but Rabbi Elvin explained that anything that's tiny enough that we can't see that, those are the ones that don't have the Isser Deraisa, because they're not doima to Elim mi'adamim. Zog to Heilige Gemara weiter. 1 second, I'm not sure if there's more messages here, so I'm just going to take a quick look. I think we're good. Zog to Heilige Gemara weiter. Very interesting Gemara. You're not allowed to be meshadach children. We say in our Zemiris here, you are allowed to be oisik in shaduchim on Shabbos, but we paskin like Basil. But the Gemara here, the Bryce here is quoting from Beishamai. You're not allowed to do shaduchim. And Veloy, and Rashi says it's because of Memsech Hefzecha, you're doing your own business. Veloy is a typical alam de sefer. You're not allowed to arrange a deal with a Rebbe to teach your child. You're allowed to teach your child Torah on Shabbos. That's not the Shaila. Shaila is if you're allowed to make a deal with a Rebbe to teach him, Ulalam de Umnis, or make a deal with somebody to teach him an Umnis. And you're not allowed to do Nichem Avelim on Shabbos. Rashi says, "Mishum de mitztarim mitztarim," because when you go, you have tsar. They mevaken chola b'Shabbos, and you're not allowed to be mevaken chola. Again, because it makes you sad. The Rabbi Shammai, Basil matir, Basil is matir, and Rabbi Elvin spoke out. When you go and you make somebody else happy, that also makes you happy, because it makes you feel good when you make somebody else feel happy. Let me just see what he says. Some interesting things. Okay, let's go weiter. The Ben Yoyada says that when you go visit somebody, when you're mevaka chola somebody, you take 1/60th of his machla. But the Ben Yoyada says that doesn't mean you get it. It just means you take that away from him. But you don't get it, so you don't get sick. So it's like a win-win situation. And he brings down that people learn that being mevaka chola is like a vaccine. You get a little 1/60th that's harmless, but that makes you immune to ever getting that sickness. If someone goes in to be mevaka chola, only you should say Shabbos imilizek or refuah kroiv. What's that kroiv? So he spoke out very nicely. He speaks out from whom? Let me just see who he says it from. I can't see offhand who he quotes it from, but his pshat of refuah kroiv is normally in the weekdays. When do we daven for refuah in Rafa'inu? On Shabbos, the only place where we daven for a chola is in the bracha of Chaim Mesim. So refuah kroiv, because the main tefillah for refuah is actually earlier in the Shemona Esrei. Oh, that must be Akiva, who talks about the shita of the machlokes between B'Shamai and Basil is you assess something by the first impression when you look at it, and at first glance, being mevaka chola, at first glance being menachem oval seems to be something that makes you sad. But after you analyze it deeper, you see there's a certain satisfaction that makes you happy, and that's Basil shita, like we learned. That's right, excellent, very shmak. And I believe Basil is disagreeing on all the cases. I think Basil is matter everything. Rashi says the kasavi cheftzcha v'lo cheftzah shemayim, and these are all cheftzah shemayim. Yeah, so all of these are cheftzah shemayim because being meshadach is cheftzah shemayim and lelam de sefer. These are all cheftzah shemayim. So I believe Basil is arguing on everything. I want to make sure if the oil wants to check in on that. I believe that Basil argues on everything. Yeah, the article definitely says that. He says it's all the activities. Yeah. Let me just look at what he says over here. Yeah, Basil is arguing on everything. Zok tehillah gemara weiter. If someone goes to visit a sick person, Reb Meir says that you tell him that Shabbos, if you're mechabed Shabbos, Shabbos will protect you, and let's look at the exact Lashon Rashi. Shabbos will protect you. Shabbos will protect you if you're mechabed Shabbos properly from having tsar on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda says, Beis Hill holds that even the oval is not an oval. What's pshat? What does that mean? What do you mean when you say even the oval is not an oval? And yes, it seems like Beis Hill holds that you are menachem oval on Shabbos. So let's see what it says over here. Rabbi Yehuda Hamakim Mirachim Alecha Val Choyle Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda says the bracha is Hashem should have rachmanas on you, and He should have rachmanas on Choyle Yisrael. But He's not putting you together. Rabbi Yossi Simon Hamakim Mirachim Alecha B'Seich Choyle Yisrael. You have to blend yourself together with Choyle Yisrael. Shavna Ish Yushalayim. Shavna Ish Yushalayim said the following: B'chnisasa, when you come into a Choyle, you say Shalom. Uv'yitziyasa Omer Shabbos. He was like refer Korvelavi. V'racham of Merubin V'shavstu B'Shalom. Command Oz Lahad Amar B'chnina. Who is this going like? This that Reb Chanina said, if somebody has a chayla in his house, he shouldn't just daven for the chayla himself, rather he should wrap the tefillah for this chayla with all the other chaylim. It was with difficulty, with a heavy heart, that they allowed us to be Menachem Ovel and Bigur Cholim on Shabbos. So you can see Duvi, here it says Beferish, that they will matter Nichem Avelim on Shabbos. When I was following Rabbi Eliezer to ask him a shaylas about Hilchos Bigur Cholim, Rashi says that Teficha means Bechola. So I assume meant that I was following Rabbi Eliezer, asking a shayla about Hilchos Chola. Zimnin, sometimes Omar, he would say Hamokoim Yivdechol Shalom, which means Hashem should remember you in peace in Lashon Kodesh. V'zimnin Amar Rachmana Yad Kol Shalim, which means the same thing, but it's in Aramaic. How could he make a tefillah, a bracha, in Aramaic? A person should never ask his trachim in Lashon Arami. The Malachei Asheres don't deal with his tefillah, don't deal with his request. She'ein Malachei Asheres makirim b'Lashon Arami. They don't speak Lashon Arami. So the Gemara is shayne choyle the Shechina imoi. Since a choyle has the Shechina with him, and the Rebbe Shalom does understand all languages, that's why by a choyle you're allowed to speak even in Lashon Arami. Rabbi Elfin spoke out from somebody. Let me see if he says who he spoke it out from. He doesn't say, but he spoke from somebody, and that's why we start off the Haggadah in Lashon Arami. We start off halachmanya. We start off in Lashon Arami because we want to say, Eidus, Rebbeinu Shalom, we know you yourself are here with us, and therefore we know you'll understand this. Anyway, how do we know that the Shechina himself supports the chayla? Hashem will support us on the bed of a sick person. If the chayla is sitting low, he shouldn't sit high on that bed. He shouldn't sit on a chair again above the chayla. Rather, you should, Rashi's Masativ, you have to cover yourself over. You have to sit focused with your hat and jacket because the Shechina is there. Why? The Shechina is found at the head of the chayla. How do you know Hashem feeds the chayla? He's amazing them. There's a famous story with Rav Bick where a bacher called him up and said, I sleep in a room in yeshiva with a boy who's sick, and we have bunk beds. I'm on the top and he's on the bottom, and my roommate who sleeps on the bed below me is sick. So I'm afraid, because the Gemara says Shechina is l'mayla me'rosh shel chayla, and I'm literally right above him on the upper bunk bed. So am I allowed to sleep in my bed? Because I'm sleeping right there with the Shechina. So Rabbi told him, you don't have to worry. I think you're the sick one, so you don't have to worry about that. So the Shechina is on top of your head. Zok tehele the Gemara weiter. V'lo yikra la'ar haner. You shouldn't read la'ar haner. Amar Rabba, afilu gavoya shtei koimos. Even if the light is 2 stories above where you are, you're still not allowed to read la'ar haner. And that's, of course, al taloi plug. Because if it's 2 stories above where you are, there's no way you could reach anyway to be able to be matter there. Vafilu shtei mardois. Vafilu asar batam zu al gavzu. Even though we're talking about something that's very far away from you and you won't be able to adjust the flame, it's still aser. Stop. One person by himself shouldn't read la'ar haner. Hatrei, if there's 2 people reading together, shaper dummy. Are you suggesting that 2 people reading together are allowed to read la'ar haner? We have another brayso that says even 2 people can't do it. If 2 people are reading the same Gemara, then one person is not going to touch the flame by mistake because I'm looking right beside my friend who will notice it and will stop me. But if I'm looking at one side of the scroll and he's looking at the other side of the scroll, we're not even working together. I'm preoccupied with what I'm looking at and he's preoccupied with what he's looking at. Then I might not notice if he's matted in there. If it's a big bonfire that people sit around, even if there's 10 people, it's usher, because everybody has his little area where he might be able to be mata and nobody would notice. If he's a very chashuv person who doesn't do anything himself, even when he's learning, if the light has to be adjusted, he has someone do it for him, so he would never do it himself. Mutter, then it would be mutter, because he's never going to do it. It's something that he wouldn't do. Meisvei, laikra la'aner. A person who's not going to read la'aner, I'm sorry, Shema Yata, because he might adjust in there. Amar b'Shmuel ben Elisha, famous Gemara. Ani ekra, I know I'll be able to read v'lo yata, and I know I won't. I'm going to be careful. I know it's not going to. I'm not going to be nichshol. Pamachas kara ubigesh la'akis. He once had a close call. He was reading and he almost adjusted it, but he caught himself. Amar, at that point he said, Kama gedolim divrei chachamim. You see, the chacham know what they're talking about. I shouldn't be an oiber chacham. Shayu oimim lo yikular there, and I should have listened. That's one pshat on what happened. There's another pshat that he actually was nichshol. Rabbi Nosson Neimer kara v'hita. He was nichshol lebech, and because he was nichshol, the chazan al penkasei ani Yishmael ben Elisha karisi v'hetisi ner b'Shabbos, which is a melacha deraisa that I did b'shogig, and therefore the cheshivna beis hamikdash avi chatosh meina. So he made himself a note that when Mashiach comes, he is going to bring a chatos. Amar Baba Shani Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. So the question was, he was an Adam Choshev. If he was an Adam Choshev, why is it that there was a problem? So Gemara, because he never acted b'shorah. He never had people adjusting for him. Even though he was a Masal Talmid Chacham and he was deserving of that Shabbos to do everything for him, he didn't want to take that covet and he did things by himself. Okay, let's see. We'll go to the two dots. We have one brayso that said Shamish boidik koishes ukairos lo'aner. The Shamish who's working for somebody, the butler, is allowed to inspect the glasses using the light to make sure they're clean. We have another brayso that says lo yivdik. So what is it? Can he or can't he? So if he's a permanent butler for somebody where he's very afraid of losing his job and he knows his boss demands perfection, he's not allowed to be boidik lo'aner because he actually might be mater. But if he's just a casual shamus that came from an agency, he doesn't really care so much if his client is upset, because tomorrow he's going to be working for somebody else, and therefore we don't have to be chosh shema yata because he's not going to be so careful. They're both being by shemesh kavua. If he's using a clean oil, which is not disgusting and smelly, where choshish, he might adjust the flame to be boidik. But if he's using neft, which stinks, you know he's not going to adjust the flame. He doesn't even want to go near it. What if it was a casual shamas? He was a b'demashcha, but it was a clean oil. Ma'u, will he be matter or not? The halacha is that it's mutter. Shamish Sheina Kavura, even with clean oil, is allowed to be boidik kelim lo'aner, but we don't publicize it. But Rabbi Yirmi said, no, it's no problem. A temporary shamis is allowed to be boidik. We never have to worry that it'll be mater. Rabbi Yirmi once came to the home of Rabasi. Rabbi Yirmi is shamis, his permanent shamis, got up, kabadik l'nahira d'shraga. He, in Rabbi Asi's home, so he was temporarily serving Rabbi Asi, he was boidik Rabbi Asi's kelim lo'aner. So Rabbi Asi's wife told Rabbi Asi, you don't allow that. You don't allow a shamash sheina kavua to be boidik lo'aner. So Rabbi Asi told his wife, don't worry, shafkei karabis firle. This shamis follows the psak of his permanent boss, Rabbi Yirmiyah, and his permanent boss, Rabbi Yirmiyah, told him that when he's working casually, he's allowed to be boidik kelim lo'arhaner. Okay, let's stop here. Thank you very much, and let's daven, and then after we daven, we'll do a kiva Zoom meeting to Chapa Shmuz and to have a l'chaim. Thank you very much, Rabbi Yossi, and have a wonderful day.